Right, hello and welcome to the second part of my interview with Cailee Anello. So we were just talking about the case studies that you had on homeopathy. Do you have any more to share with us?
Yeah, so a really classic remedy that basically everyone would probably need in their lifetime if they're interested in homeopathy is Ignatia, and it's made from seed pods, and so it's the classic grief remedy. So whether you've just lost somebody who's close to you or you have suppressed grief that oftentimes will show up in the lungs and in the throat, Ignatia is such a good remedy for that. I've seen it work wonders for people and for myself. You know, when I lost my brother at 14, I didn't know about homeopathy. So when I realized that I had a lot of grief that was still stuck and that was still showing up in my dreams, I took Ignatia, and it was a really interesting experience. And it's an experience that other people have had as well, taking this remedy, is that once they take it, a lot of times they'll have a good cry. It'll bring out the tears and you'll have a really good release. And then you'll have a dream where there's some sort of resolution.
Wow.
So there was a case study of an older man who lost his son. And he just could not get over the death of his son. You know, it's not supposed to be like that. He's supposed to die before his son. He was just so hung up on it, and he started to have a lot of lung issues and chronic coughing and things like that. And oftentimes when Ignatia is indicated, the person will have a lump in their throat, like they can't quite say what they need to say, and they'll feel uncomfortable like in their throat. And so once he took the remedy, he had a dream that his son came to him and said, "Dad, it's okay. You need to move on with your life. I'm fine. You know, it's you that you need to take care of now. And you need to look inside of yourself and really connect back to you, and don't worry about me." And so once he had that dream, he woke up, and it was like a huge weight had been lifted off of his chest. And the symptoms of that quickly cleared, the coughing and the lump in the throat and everything like that. So it's interesting because we can look at dreams to see, did the remedy work? Did we make the right choice of remedy? Because there's not just one remedy for grief, but that's the one that often comes up. So it's interesting in that way.
Yeah, amazing. Gosh. So
And
any kind of emotional disturbance or problem you can help with, as well as any sort of physical as well.
yeah, so oh, that's right. So something I wanted to bring up is very interesting is that while homeopathy helps both emotional and physical ailments, just from what I've learned from the homeopath I'm working with, who has volunteered a lot in India and third world countries, he's saying that it's a lot more complex in the West, so in Europe and America, that a lot of times the physical ailments will have a lot of layers of adaptation, as in they've been severely covered up with medicine and suppressed emotions. And so a lot of times it's like peeling back layers of an onion and to get to the real core of that person. And there's always an emotional component to it. And it's just, they tend to be a lot more complex cases because in our culture, we tend to be more introspective, and we know about more psychology, and we have more access, fortunately or unfortunately, to pharmaceuticals that further suppress an illness.
So is it that in the East they're better, that they can deal with their emotions better as well? Is that part of it, or perhaps that they're in maybe bigger families and communities where they can actually discuss their problems in a way that we can't do? Is it maybe something to do with that?
Yeah, it's part of that. And I don't want to misconstrue his words, but it was something to the effect of they just aren't as introspective as a culture. So a lot of times when people come to him from the West, they've thought a lot about what they're going through. They have a lot of theories. They've been to a lot of doctors. Whereas somebody who isn't necessarily from a Western country, they won't have had that, and the core remedies tend to just work a lot better on them. Whereas in the West, he had to really, really expand his knowledge on remedies and use a lot more out there remedies and remedies that weren't as core to homeopathy, because we call them polycrests, where it's just there's a handful of remedies that tend to work, like this works for this ailment and this works for this ailment, kind of like Ignatia works for grief. But with the Western world, it tends to be a lot more complicated, and that you have to dig a lot deeper.
Okay.
It's just an interesting thing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So when do you qualify?
So I have probably about 9 months.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. I work with it a little bit now. Sometimes I work with flower essences, which they just tend to, because homeopathy, if you don't choose the right remedy, it can aggravate people.
Okay.
So, because it's that thing, what works in a sick person to make them better makes a healthy person a bit sick, and it wears off. You know, it's not a big deal at all. But if I have a lot of knowledge of the remedy, then I will start giving it to them now, just because there are no like I have already a nutrition certification, and I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah. You know, in shadow work, when some of these kind of difficult emotions come up and people experience depression, with shadow work, my advice is usually to kind of go into that feeling and to do the active imagination, but also to mind themselves as well. So just to make sure that they don't get swallowed up in those really negative emotions. But I'm just wondering, like with the kind of the medicine that you're talking about, you would have a way then to maybe not suppress, but to relieve some of those symptoms of what is essentially maybe the start of their journey. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So let's just take the example of depression, because with every homeopathic remedy, it's just like in human design. There's a spectrum. So somebody on the beginning of that spectrum, maybe they are sad occasionally, whereas on the other end of the spectrum, they may be suicidal and they could hurt themselves. And so let's take, a classic remedy for suicidal thoughts is Aura Metallicum. And so if somebody is in their shadow work journey and they are just in a depression so deep that they can't get out of bed and they can't even think about doing an active imagination, and they're in a really dire state, that remedy could quite literally save their life, because it relieves that darkness. So from my perspective, it's kind of like my perspective with nutrition. A lot of times, especially in a culture like ours, that we're just sicker and sicker all the time. Sometimes there needs to be a foundation for somebody to even be able to be introspective, to even be able to watch or to read, these really complex books, to have the energy to look inside and to look at themselves. And so it's an interesting thing. I have my Materia Medica here, which is the book of homeopathy. So it looks like this. It's like, so it kind of looks like the Bible.
It looks important, yeah.
But essentially, so we talk about shadow work. A remedy in here that's very lunar is Argentum Metallicum, and it's silver. So silver like the moon. So a lot of these people, they'll be worse around the full moon. All their symptoms will kick up, whether that's headaches, paranoia, really anxiety, delusions, and of course, like with anything, it's a spectrum. There can be somebody who's completely out of their mind who needs this remedy, and there can be somebody who just has a bit of anxiety and insomnia around the full moon. So if you go to a homeopath or you do your own research and you find, I could benefit from Argentum nitricum, you look at the Materia Medica, and it has, let me see if I can show it, if it shows up, but it has all these categories. So let me try. Can you see it at all?
Yeah.
Essentially, essentially there's different sections. So it's what the mind will be. So that's emotional issues, what dreams could look like. And then it'll go by organ system. So if you have digestive issues, if you have phobias, what you're better from, what you're worse from, in this case, worse from the moon, better when it's not a full moon, right? So it could start the process of introspection in a very unique and powerful way and say, do I have this phobia? Have I never looked at that before? Or do I have dreams of snakes? That's an Argentum thing. Do I, it's something I always like to say that homeopathy makes you honest. And so even if I give somebody Argentum and their anxiety lessens, I happen to have taken this remedy for when I had panic attacks. It's a good panic attack remedy.
Mm-hmm.
At the root of it is a fear of loss of control.
Yeah.
And so it says that in the Materia Medica, and that gave me a framework of like, okay. And then I started to put the pieces together, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, because I'm in a plane. There's nowhere I can go. I'm not in control of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with other things, like being, like for me, I didn't like being high up. Like I was afraid of heights, which is an Argentum thing as well, phobia. And I'm like, oh my God, like it's whenever I can't have the utmost control of something. And so it gives you like a starting point for, let me work with that in active imagination. Let me go through my dreams and see. Or it increases your awareness. Like, okay, am I just freaking out because I don't have control? You know, it's one of those things
Mm-hmm.
where it just gives you a framework of what to work for. And it's like you have to you have to respect the remedy and what it does for you by working with it, not just, you know, what are we all looking for? It's like, just give me a pill and fix me. It's not like that, because I mean, like for Ignatia, you're going to have to go through those sobbing episodes. It'll pull up memories that you didn't want to look at. But it just kind of unlocks that, how do I want to say it? It kind of unlocks Pandora's box, and everything you repressed, it starts to come up in your memory.
So would this be a really good thing then for people who are starting their shadow work process and they can't remember things that they want to delve in? Because a few people have kind of wanted to start and they can't remember their childhood. There are things that they just can't remember. So would Ignatia be something that they could use to start remembering?
Oh my gosh, I wish it worked like that, where I could just give you guys like a top 10 remedies for shadow work or something. I really wish. It's because it works with nature. It's specifically how it's expressed through that person, because there could be many remedies about not remembering dreams.
Okay.
My best advice for that is to really make that active intention, and maybe start with active imagination. Just everybody has triggers in their life, and I know that's a funny word, I'm triggered, but it's true. It's like everybody has their thing that really irks them or bugs them, and it's like if you start having active imaginations around that, I've just found through my own life and working with other people that if they start that process while they're awake, it will continue while they're asleep, because they're open to receiving that kind of information. You have to open yourself up to it in a way.
Well, one of the bit of advice that I give is to go and visit childhood homes.
Wow.
And, and actually myself and my brother, we spoke today on the phone, and I suggested that we both go and visit the homes we lived in, and we lived in about, I don't know how many, 7 homes, I think. And so we're going to go and visit all of the homes and the nursery and the schools and the play parks and the places that we used to play and go. And because he finds it very hard to remember things about our childhood. And I've got memories that he doesn't have, and he has a few memories that I don't have. And I just think that by being there, you know, we're going to sort of trigger each other. And another thing that I did about a month or 6 weeks ago is I asked a lady to do a memory board. I don't know if you saw that on the group.
Oh yeah.
And so she had this little red chair that she remembers as a child, and then there were some toys, and then there was the road she went on, the school that she went to. So she kind of put all these things down, and then she started to remember things. But when you start this process, you have to be really ready to remember stuff that, you know, could really hurt you. And actually I'm in contact with one lady who's going through the process right now. She is literally going through the fire with all the memories that are coming up, and she's drawing pictures and then, you know, turn them a certain way, and it's just, wow, that's the thing, you know, that, you know, she remembers all this stuff just from her own artwork. So it's really impactful, isn't it? But yeah, that's definitely something that I would suggest. Go visit your old childhood homes to remember where you came from.
Oh, that's powerful. Yeah, for me, because I moved across the country, so, but I do go back to Chicago, going back next week actually. For me, it's music, because it's kind of like when you smell something and it brings you back. For me, music listening to music I listened to in high school and cringing halfway through it. But that is powerful for bringing up memories that I've found too.
Yeah. Or even some old food that you would have eaten when you were a child as well, or sweets, or all of those things that sort of activate the senses. But most definitely speaking to people that have got memories of you, maybe some old friends or family that will know stuff about you that you may have forgotten. All of that stuff kind of helps to remember those things. It's a shame there isn't just a pill you can take and just remember all the stuff you need to know. But life is
once you match the remedy, it will bring that stuff up, surely, right, which is cool. And even I found through human design charts, this is something that was really unexpected for me. I would get feedback from somebody because they would re-listen to the reading, I record it for them, and all of a sudden they would just start crying, or it would bring up really powerful and strong memories for them, and they had no idea that they were getting into that, and I had no idea that it would do that. But even like just going through things in a human design chart and your shadows, and maybe it reminded them of something, I'm not sure, but there has a way of doing that too.
It's amazing. It sounds like a brilliant practice. Really good.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it a lot.
So will we talk now about destiny versus proactive life choices?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, where to even start?
Well, I'll start with something, because my mum always tells me that in sort of Arabic countries, when a child is born, they say that the child is born with their destiny on their head. They call it the maktub. So basically, your destiny is predestined. There's no choice. You're just going to go through the fire.
Right.
So, and you said something about open identity centers. So the chakras, the chakra system already being in place in alignment with the astrology to say what kind of person you're going to be.
Yeah. It's I see it much as like a natal chart in astrology, where there are definite energies that you're going to most likely go through. It shows your strengths and it shows your weaknesses. And in human design specifically, like I was mentioning, where you have open centers and even open gates, if you have somebody in your life and they have that defined, which often we attract people with kind of opposite charts, in those ways they'll have a lot of definition where we're open. You can really take a lot of that stuff on, and it has a little bit of a different feel to it based on the center. So if you have an open emotional center, you're going to be taking in the emotions of others. And a lot of times, if people don't have this awareness, they think that it's all theirs to sort through and theirs to work through. So they're more prone to being that like shoulder to cry on, where they don't ever deal with their emotions. They're just constantly trying to be that person for other people and dealing with other people's emotions. Just as an example, the root center is the center of adrenaline and stress, and it's also the center that propels somebody to evolve and to grow as a person. If one person in a partnership has that open, the other person has it defined, the person with that root center open, they're going to constantly feel stress and pressure from that person to move faster, to do things quicker, to move, and they're going to be a slower moving person. And then the identity center, like you said, literally, it can be where, because you are prone to taking on the identity of others, I've found a lot of therapists and people who work with others will have this center open, and it's because they can be empathetic and they can really step into somebody else's shoes and to really feel what it's like to be that person. So that's a strength. But then they can lose themselves in other people, especially in partnerships, or when they're a child and they have a parent who's trying to like get them to be a certain way and fulfill what they didn't have in their life. They can be somebody who's very manipulated by others into living lives for other people. So you can have all these energies in a chart. Doesn't mean that because you have an open identity center, you're going to be in terrible enmeshment relationships that are codependent. And it could, if you're not aware, and if you're kind of just, how do I put it? If you just don't have the awareness around it, but it doesn't mean that that has to be the case. Especially if you are aware of it, you can work on it and you can choose to live differently. So it's like you may have distinctive energies in the chart that you were meant to work through in this life. That could be a destiny thing, but you choose how you use that energy and what you do with it. So I guess it's a bit of both.
I was going to say this because I was looking for some quotes to see what Carl Jung would say about it, and also Heidegger. And Heidegger says that your destiny can't be changed, but it can be challenged.
Yes.
Every man is born as many men and dies a single one. And Carl Jung says, I'm not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become, and we meet our destiny on the road we take to avoid it. Now this quote for me, the last one, we meet our destiny on the road we take to avoid it, I can really relate to that, because I most definitely kind of took some swerve roads before getting to the place that I am now, which is my more authentic sort of version of me. But I think that that's probably true for a lot of people. Have you had any, is that true for you too?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's weird, because I guess you could say I met my destiny by accident. And I definitely was avoiding, meeting parts of myself very actively, especially with college. It's perfectly socially acceptable to drink all the time and to not be in tune with yourself and to just, completely avoid yourself altogether. So that's what I was doing. I was like just partying, and that's the only way that I could relate to people. And
so
then
how do you get on, if you don't mind me asking, because you're a young person, you're in college or university, so how do you get on with other people? I mean, you've obviously got a higher level of insight and perspective than a lot of the people that you must hang around with, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'm not in college anymore, but I see what you're saying. So it's very interesting. Can be very lonely. I think that as I've accepted more of my weirdness and accepted that I have different ideas on things.
Can I just say it's not weird, it's unique?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's what I preach to other people. I should be saying that to myself. So essentially, the more I accepted myself, the more that other people started to accept it. They may not understand. And I certainly don't advertise what I do to everybody, because it's just not worth going into. If I know that it's like a matter of gauging, is somebody receptive or not? So a lot of times there will be definitely parts that I keep to myself, and I just kind of like, I'm into nutrition, natural health, and I don't really get into it. But then if I get to know somebody and I know that they'll be receptive to it, then I will engage in that conversation. Now it's different because now I'm putting myself out there more, and we'll see what happens with that. Stay tuned to how that works out for me.
Well, you're just going to be forced to really be yourself in front of everyone. That's really what's going to happen, and it's up to them whether or not they're going to accept it. But I think that the more that you do it, the more you'll find that people will be receptive to you, because I'm sure of it, because the more authentic you are, the better you are, the better you come across.
Yeah, I agree. And that's another thing that homeopathy really helped me with, is because I was really, really resistant to kind of stepping into the role of helping other people. But it was through helping other people that I got a lot better myself, actually. Once I had that solid foundation in me, putting myself out there and helping others has been like the best thing I've ever done. Really, it's just been so rewarding.
I think the idea of the wounded healer, I'd probably say to everyone who's done their shadow work, or who's anyone who's done their shadow work and come to a really good place within themselves, they should also then try to support others, because I think that is really nourishing, and that's what I found for myself in doing the group. I found it really, really nourishing emotionally, and to help other people is also to help yourself, because I'm still learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. The more I show up authentically, then you attract the right people into your life. Not like law of attraction. It's funny, but the people that are into the similar things, they know you're out there because you're not hiding, so it's a really powerful thing. And I'm happy to be in this chapter of my life now, because definitely back in the day, I spent a lot of years more so in isolation, but it was necessary because that's how I learned. And those years were necessary because I had to be on my own in a sense to really go through my process and have that foundation to help other people. And now it's like I'm in the phase where I'm going back out into the world and helping other people. So I think that these kind of things just go in cycles, and maybe I'll go through that cycle again. I don't know, but
yeah. Oh, yeah. I think from what I've learned is that the when you do the shadow work, the main part that you do is usually at the beginning. But then again, I haven't seen what it is like for a young person. Perhaps you're still going to have your midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't laugh.
It wasn't even a quarter life crisis because I was 20. It was just, it's so funny because I feel like I had my like party years, like, and once I turned 21 and I was legally able to do so, I stopped.
Oh, really?
I stopped drinking, and I did. I mean, it's just like something where it's, we talk about destiny versus, shaping your life and being the architect of your own life. I believe in both, but
yeah.
The interesting thing about that is I feel like some of us are more naturally open to things than others. And I've always been really curious about that. Like, why will somebody hear about shadow work and maybe they're resistant to it at first, but ultimately it resonates at a deep core level for some, where others will just automatically run the other way. Why is that? It's like, it's one of those things. And, because
I think the idea of shadow work has got a really dark aspect to it. And I think that there are some people that are just more prone to that kind of darker, like kind of looking for the hidden stuff, looking for the truth. I think that everyone on the group who's doing their shadow work are also looking for truth as well, the truth of themselves. And not everyone is looking for that. A lot of people, like you said, they're externally focused and they want someone to come and fix them. They want to have the card reading and say, oh yeah, you're wonderful, you're going to meet a lovely man and you're going to fly off to America, whatever. They want to know happily ever after. That's what they want, because essentially they've bought the lie that that's what life is going to be like, and it's not like that. And it's hard for them to look at themselves, but I think that maybe you need to have sort of a predisposition to something that is unseen. I think if you would have had some kind of sort of mystical experience, or maybe seen something a bit unusual when you're a child, maybe that kind of starts the fascination. Because I mean, a lot of people that I've spoken to have had that, and I've definitely had that.
It's interesting too, because people, like for example, in my chart, like there's a gate in my head center, which is just like the idea of what you'll be more geared towards in learning. I have the center of occult knowledge, or the gate of that. And I found that really spooky and just like weird things. I'm also a Pisces, so we love the underworld and we love to get dark. So there's a predisposition there as well. It's an interesting thing. It's like, it's always fascinated me how something can really strike a chord with one person, and like another person, they couldn't care less, even if you think it's like the most important thing in the world. And to me it is, but to other people, they're like, what? I don't know about all that.
Well, Terence McKenna, he has a brilliant quote that says, if you find yourself lonely if you find yourself lonely, find the others. And I think that that's one thing that we can do through social media somehow. I've realized that's what we can do.
Absolutely.
Who are sort of like-minded, which is really, really good. Well, listen, Cailee, thanks so much for your time today. It's been great speaking to you. So where can people find you if they want to avail of your services?
So you can find me at The Ripened Heart everywhere. So I have a website called The Ripened Heart, and I'm also on Instagram, where I don't know how many of your members are on Instagram, but I do have an Instagram, The Ripened Heart, where I have a lot of free information on there, and I'm always trying to teach, and I have some videos, and Facebook page that I kind of keep updated. But yeah, that's where you can find me, or find me on the group too.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much, Cailee, and hopefully we can speak again another time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Okay, thanks, Cailee.